Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet? Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now let's go. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting striped shadows across the granite countertop where Wyatt Morgan stood preparing his coffee. Steam rose from the dark liquid as he added a splash of cream, his wedding ring catching the light as he stirred. The house held that particular kind of silence that came with early mornings, a silence that used to feel comfortable but lately seemed to hold an edge of something else. He glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m. In the 10 years of their marriage, he had learned to read the rhythm of their mornings like a well-worn book. Lana would be up soon, rushing through her routine with the nervous energy that had become her constant companion these past few months. Right on cue, he heard the soft footsteps upstairs, followed by the familiar creak of their bedroom door. But the routine had shifted lately, subtle changes that nagged at him like a splinter under his skin. The shower ran longer than it used to. Her morning routine had expanded to include extra time for makeup, for choosing outfits with a care she hadn't shown in years. Wyatt took his coffee to the breakfast nook, opening his laptop to check emails. The architecture firm where he worked as a senior partner had a major project presentation next week, but his mind kept wandering from the blueprints on his screen to the changes in his home life. The sound of heels clicking against hardwood announced Lana's descent. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, perfectly put together in a navy pencil skirt and cream blouse. Her dark hair fell in careful waves past her shoulders, styled the way she used to do for their date nights, before they'd stopped having those. "Morning," he offered, watching as she moved straight to the coffee maker, her phone already in hand. "Oh, morning," she replied, distracted by whatever was on her screen. Her fingers moved rapidly, typing out a message. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, the kind of smile he rarely saw directed at him anymore. "Want breakfast? I could make eggs," Wyatt suggested, remembering weekend mornings when they cooked together, planning their day over fresh coffee and shared sections of the newspaper. "No time." Lana grabbed a travel mug from the cabinet, filling it quickly. "Big presentation today. The Johnson account needs final revisions before the client meeting." Wyatt nodded, noting how she still hadn't made eye contact. "Another late night then." "Probably." She dropped the tea bag into her mug, something else that had changed. She'd switched from coffee to green tea 3 weeks ago, claiming it was better for her skin. "Don't wait up for dinner. I'll grab something at the office." "I could bring you lunch," he suggested, testing the waters. "That new Thai place opened near your office." Finally, she looked at him, but her eyes skated away too quickly. "Oh, that's sweet, but I've got a working lunch with the team. Maybe another time." Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. The smile that crossed her face was immediate, unconscious, and felt like a punch to his gut. She turned slightly, angling the screen away from his view as she typed a response. "I should go. Don't want to hit traffic." Lana grabbed her purse from the counter. Checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, she reapplied her lipstick. MAC Ruby Woo. He remembered buying it for her last Christmas, and fluffed her hair. "Have a good day." The door closed behind her with a soft click that echoed in the sudden emptiness of the house. Wyatt sat there, his coffee growing cold, and tried to pinpoint exactly when things had started to change. It hadn't been sudden, like erosion wearing away at a coastline. The shift had been gradual enough that he'd almost missed it. But there were moments, crystal clear in hindsight, that should have warned him. The password on her phone changed for the first time in years. New clothes appearing in her closet, tags removed before he could see the prices. Private calls taken in another room, her voice too low to make out the words. Each detail on its own might mean nothing, but together they formed a pattern he couldn't ignore. At work that day, Wyatt found himself distracted. The blueprints for the Harrison project blurred before his eyes as his mind replayed morning after morning of similar scenes. Earth to Wyatt, Marcus, his friend and fellow architect, waved the hand in front of his face. "You okay, man? You've been staring at that same section for 20 minutes. Wyatt blinked, forcing himself to focus. "Yeah, just thinking about the support beam placement." Marcus leaned against his desk, lowering his voice. "Sure it's not about something else? You've been quiet lately." "It's nothing." Wyatt straightened the papers on his desk, a habit when he needed to organize his thoughts. Just some stuff at home I need to figure out. Trouble in paradise? Marcus asked, then held up his hands at Wyatt's sharp look. None of my business. Just remember, I'm here if you need to talk. Wyatt nodded, grateful for the offer, but knowing he wasn't ready to voice his suspicions. Speaking them aloud would make them real, and he needed more information first. The day dragged on, each hour marked by the temptation to drive by Lana's office to verify her working lunch story. He resisted, throwing himself into work instead. By 6 p.m., he'd made more progress on the Harrison project than he had all week, fueled by a need to keep his mind occupied. Driving home, he decided to make dinner anyway. They used to enjoy cooking together, and even if she came home late, he could at least try to maintain some normalcy. He stopped at the grocery store, selecting ingredients for her favorite chicken marsala. The house felt different when he walked in, emptier somehow, despite the fact that Lana was rarely home this early anyway. He moved through the kitchen with practiced ease, the routine of cooking offering a temporary distraction from his thoughts. The chicken was just coming out of the oven when he heard her key in the lock, earlier than expected. His heart rate picked up as he listened to her heels on the hardwood, noting how she paused, probably checking her appearance in the hallway mirror again. Something smells amazing, Lana said as she entered the kitchen. Her cheeks were flushed, hair slightly disheveled in a way that might be from the wind or something else. She set her purse down, and Wyatt noticed how she angled her body to keep it close. Thought we could eat together for a change. He kept his voice casual as he plated the food. How was the presentation? Oh, it went well. She swept her hair back from her face, a nervous gesture he recognized. The client loved our initial concepts. We're moving forward with the full proposal. Wyatt nodded, setting their plates on the dining room table. He'd opened a bottle of red wine earlier, letting it breathe. Lana took her seat, immediately reaching for her phone. Work can wait, he suggested, pouring her wine. When's the last time we had dinner together? Guilt flickered across her face as she set the phone aside. You're right. This looks wonderful, honey. They ate in what felt like practiced silence, broken only by the scrape of cutlery against plates. Wyatt watched her over the rim of his wine glass, noting how she kept glancing at her phone, how her leg bounced slightly under the table. Another nervous tick. How's the Johnson account really going? He asked, breaking the silence. Must be intense if you're having so many late nights. Lana looked up, seeming distracted. Oh, yes. The client is very particular about their requirements. Grant. She paused for just a moment, but Wyatt caught it. The team is working overtime to meet their expectations. As if on cue, her phone lit up, screen facing upward after she'd shifted in her chair. Wyatt caught the flash of a message notification, and in that split second, his world tilted on its axis. The words burned into his retinas. Can't wait to feel you again tonight. Time seemed to freeze. The fork in Wyatt's hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Blood rushed in his ears as the words repeated themselves in his mind, each repetition bringing a new wave of nausea. Lana's hand darted out to grab the phone, but her reaction, the slight tremor in her fingers, the way her face drained of color, only confirmed what he'd seen. Everything okay? He managed to ask, amazed at how steady his voice sounded when everything inside him was screaming. Just work stuff, Lana mumbled, shoving the phone into her pocket. You know how it is with deadlines and client demands. Wyatt forced himself to take another bite of chicken that now tasted like ash in his mouth. His mind raced through the past few months, each memory taking on new meaning. The late nights, the emotional distance, the constant phone checking. The pieces of the puzzle snapped into place with devastating clarity. I should review some files for tomorrow, Lana said, standing abruptly. Her plate was still half full, the food barely touched. Thanks for dinner. It was delicious. Wyatt watched her retreat to their home office, his appetite completely gone. The urge to follow her, to demand answers, to unleash the storm of emotions building inside him was almost overwhelming. But something held him back. A cold, calculating voice in his head urged patience. He needed to know everything before he acted. That night, lying in bed beside his wife, Wyatt stared at the ceiling fan as it spun lazy circles above them. Lana lay with her back to him, her breathing even but not quite deep enough for real sleep. The space between them felt infinite, though they were separated by only inches. He thought about the woman he'd married 10 years ago, the way she looked at him across the altar, her eyes bright with tears of joy. The life they'd built together, the plans they'd made, all of it now tainted by whatever was happening with this Grant person. The next morning, Wyatt began his investigation in earnest. He left for work early, parking near Lana's office building. He watched as she arrived, noting how she checked her appearance one last time before entering. 20 minutes later, a man he didn't recognize held the door for her, following close behind. Their body language spoke volumes, too familiar, too comfortable. Over the next few days, Wyatt pieced together more of the puzzle. He noticed how Lana always took her phone to the bathroom, never left it unattended, but she grew careless in her confidence, leaving small openings in her security. During one such moment while she showered, Wyatt managed to access her phone. His hand shook slightly as he opened her email, grateful she hadn't thought to change that password. The evidence was there, in conversations between Lana and Grant Thompson. Emails filled with innuendos and references to meetings that never appeared on her work calendar. A quick LinkedIn search revealed Grant's profile, early 30s, carefully styled dark hair, the kind of professional headshot that belonged in a magazine. His profile listed him as a senior account manager at Lana's firm, with recommendations praising his charismatic leadership and ability to connect with clients. Each new detail felt like another knife in Wyatt's back, but he maintained his composure. At dinner, he'd ask about her day, listening as she wove stories about client meetings and project deadlines. He watched how she'd check her phone under the table, thinking he couldn't see her slight smile at whatever message appeared. The real confirmation came unexpectedly. Wyatt had stopped for coffee near Lana's office, legitimately in the area for a client meeting, when he overheard two women at the next table. "Did you see them at the holiday party?" the first woman whispered, not quite quietly enough. The way Grant was following Lana around like a puppy. "He's always been a player," her companion replied with a knowing tone. "Remember Jessica from accounting? Same story, different year. Though I have to say, he usually goes for the single ones." Wyatt's hand tightened around his coffee cup, the cardboard creasing under his grip. He forced himself to remain seated, to keep his breathing even as the women continued their gossip. "Well, you know what they say about the quiet ones," the first woman continued. "She always seems so straight-laced, but I guess Grant has a way of bringing out people's wild side. Did you see them at Murphy's last week? They were in the back booth, definitely not discussing the Johnson account, if you know what I mean." The women laughed, the sound grating against Wyatt's nerves like sandpaper. He stood abruptly, leaving his half-finished coffee on the table. The cool air outside helped clear his head, but the women's words kept repeating in his mind. That evening, watching Lana prepare for another late meeting, Wyatt felt something fundamental shift inside him. The initial shock and pain had crystallized into something harder, colder. He observed her with new eyes as she applied fresh lipstick in the hallway mirror, smoothed her skirt with practiced hands. "Don't wait up," she called over her shoulder, the words so familiar they'd lost all meaning. "Lots to review for the Johnson account." "Of course," Wyatt replied, his voice carefully neutral. "Good luck with the review." The door closed behind her, and Wyatt walked to the window, watching as she pulled out of the driveway. He waited until her car disappeared around the corner before reaching for his keys. Tonight, he decided, he would see exactly what kind of review she was conducting. Following her proved surprisingly easy. She drove to a small Italian restaurant on the other side of town, far from both their home and her office. Through the window, Wyatt watched as she greeted Grant with a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. They sat close, heads bent together, sharing a bottle of wine and laughing at private jokes. Wyatt sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He memorized Grant's face, noted the way he touched Lana's hand across the table, observed how comfortable they seemed together. This wasn't a first date or a casual fling. This was an established affair. The next week passed in a blur of surveillance and discovery. Wyatt learned their patterns, the days they met, the excuses Lana used. He watched as she transformed from his wife into someone else entirely, laughing, flirting, alive in a way she hadn't been with him in years. Each night, lying beside her in their bed, Wyatt refined his plan. The fury inside him had cooled into something more dangerous, a calculated resolve that would ensure both Lana and Grant understood the consequences of their actions. He thought about confronting them immediately, about exposing their affair to everyone they knew, about simply walking away. But none of those options satisfied the deep sense of betrayal that had taken root in his heart. One evening, as Lana showered, Wyatt stared at her phone on the kitchen counter. She'd grown careless lately, confident in her ability to maintain her double life. The message notification lit up the screen. Another text from Grant discussing their next meeting. Wyatt picked up the phone, his decision made. He wouldn't confront her yet, wouldn't give her the chance to spin excuses or beg forgiveness. Instead, he would wait, gather more evidence, and when the time came, ensure that both Lana and her lover understood exactly what they destroyed. The shower water continued to run upstairs as Wyatt memorized Grant's number, his mind already forming a plan. He replaced the phone exactly as he found it, moving to the living room window. Outside, the street was quiet, peaceful, completely at odds with the storm building inside him. In their bedroom that night, Wyatt listened to Lana's breathing even out as she fell asleep. He thought about the years they'd shared, the trust they'd built, the future they'd planned, all of it meaningless now, shattered by her betrayal. As he stared at the ceiling, his resolve hardened. He would make them pay, not with violence or loud confrontations, but with the cold, calculated precision that would leave them both understanding exactly what they'd lost. Tomorrow, he decided, he would begin the next phase of his plan. Let them think they were clever. Let them believe their secret was safe. Soon enough, they would learn the true cost of their actions. Wyatt set his plan into motion. He sent a message to Grant from Lana's phone, inviting him to their home under the pretense that Wyatt would be working late. That evening, he made sure Lana believed he was heading to the office, but instead, he waited in the darkened living room. At 8 p.m., the front door opened quietly. Grant entered, confident and unhurried, until Wyatt switched on the lamp. The confrontation was tense. Wyatt revealed that he knew everything about the affair, displaying evidence he had gathered. Grant tried to deflect, but Wyatt's calm fury was unyielding. "You're going to disappear from her life," Wyatt commanded. "No goodbyes, no explanations. If you try to contact her again, there will be consequences." Grant, realizing the severity of the situation, agreed and fled. Later that night, when Lana returned, Wyatt confronted her. She attempted to deny it at first, but faced with the evidence, she broke down. Wyatt told her to pack her things and leave. Despite her pleas for forgiveness, he remained resolute. In the following weeks, Wyatt filed for divorce. Lana tried multiple times to reconcile, but he blocked her attempts. He focused on moving forward, acknowledging that while he had lost something, trust, perhaps a piece of his heart, he had also gained a clearer understanding of his own strength. One evening, as he prepared to meet a friend for drinks, Wyatt felt a sense of closure. The house, once filled with memories of a shared life, now felt like the foundation for a new beginning. He knew he would never let anyone make him question his worth again. End of story.